The Algorithm of Magic. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Mastery. The air crackled with anticipation, charged with an electric mix of excitement and latent power. Ada stood motionless in the shadows of the backstage area, her eyes closed, her breath measured and controlled. To an outsider, she might have appeared to be centering herself, perhaps gathering her magical energies for the spectacle to come. In reality, she was running through complex quantum algorithms in her mind, each calculation a brick in the elaborate facade she was about to present. "You're on in 2 minutes, Miss Lovelace," a stagehand whispered, his voice tinged with awe. Ada nodded, her eyes snapping open. She smoothed down her outfit, a sleek, form-fitting jumpsuit etched with glowing circuitry that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. As she moved towards the stage, she caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. The woman who stared back was the picture of confidence and power, a far cry from the turmoil churning beneath the surface. The roar of the crowd hit her like a physical force as she stepped onto the stage. The techno-magical amphitheatre was packed to capacity, thousands of faces turned expectantly towards her. Holographic displays high above magnified her image, broadcasting it to millions more across the globe. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice rang out, amplified and rich with authority, "prepare to witness the impossible." With a flourish of her hands, Ada began her performance. To the enraptured audience, it appeared as if she was weaving reality itself. Streams of light coalesced at her fingertips, forming intricate patterns that danced and shifted in the air. With a snap of her fingers, the light transformed into a flock of shimmering birds that swooped over the gasping crowd. As the performance progressed, Ada's feats grew increasingly spectacular. She summoned miniature galaxies that spun between her palms, created and shattered illusory worlds with a mere gesture, and even seemed to manipulate time itself, causing flowers to bloom and wither in seconds. Each trick was a masterful blend of advanced holographics, quantum manipulation, and precision-timed nanobots, a symphony of technology masquerading as magic. Each feat was met with louder applause, more astonished gasps. Yet with every trick, every illusion, Ada felt the weight of her deception grow heavier. The irony wasn't lost on her. The more convincingly she portrayed a master of magic, the further she felt from any real mastery. From a private box high above the stage, 2 figures watched with keen interest. Dr. Elara Voss, her silver hair gleaming in the dim light, leaned forward, her eyes never leaving Ada's form. Beside her, shrouded in shadows, the Archmagus remained inscrutable, their hooded face betraying no emotion. "She's exceeding even our highest expectations," Dr. Voss murmured, a note of pride in her voice. The Archmagus remained silent for a long moment before responding, their voice a low, androgynous whisper. "Indeed. But at what cost, I wonder? The line between technology and magic grows thinner with each passing day." On stage, oblivious to this exchange, Ada was reaching the climax of her performance. With a series of intricate gestures, she appeared to tear a hole in the very fabric of reality. The audience held its breath as she stepped into the shimmering portal, vanishing from sight. A heartbeat later, she reappeared at the back of the amphitheatre, eliciting a deafening roar of approval. As the applause washed over her, Ada allowed herself a small, genuine smile. The thrill of pulling off such a complex feat, a combination of holographic projection, teleportation technology, and split-second timing, momentarily overtook her doubts. But as she made her way back to the stage for her final bow, the smile faded. The adoration of the crowd felt hollow, built on a foundation of smoke and mirrors. As she waved one last time and exited the stage, Ada felt her carefully constructed facade begin to crumble. Back in the safety of her private dressing room, away from the adoring masses and the watchful eyes of her superiors, Ada finally allowed her composure to slip. She slumped into a chair, her head in her hands, the weight of her deception pressing down on her like a physical force. "What am I doing?" she whispered to the empty room, her voice barely audible over the muffled sounds of the still cheering crowd. "How long can I keep this up? Is there even a difference between magic and technology anymore?" The glowing circuits on her jumpsuit dimmed, mirroring her mood. In that moment, Ada, the legendary techno-mage, felt more like a fraud than ever before. The line between magic and technology, already blurred in the eyes of the world, seemed to waver in her mind. As the echoes of applause faded, Ada was left alone with her thoughts, standing on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. She glanced at her computer terminal, where lines of code scrolled endlessly, the backbone of her magical illusions. For a fleeting moment she thought she saw patterns in the code that she didn't recognize, as if the programs were evolving on their own. Ada blinked, and the moment passed. She shook her head, wondering if the stress was finally getting to her. As she prepared to leave, Ada couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of a discovery, one that could shatter the very foundations of their techno-magical world. Chapter 2. Seeds of Doubt. Ada's fingers danced across the holographic interface, dismissing a torrent of congratulatory messages flooding her neural implant. The door to her private lab sealed with a soft hiss, shutting out the world that revered her as a techno-mage extraordinaire. She needed solitude, clarity. "Merlin, engage privacy protocols," she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Privacy protocols engaged, Ada," came the response, a soothing baritone that seemed to emanate from the very air. "Your vital signs indicate elevated stress levels. Shall I prepare a calming tea?" "No, thank you," Ada replied, collapsing into her ergonomic chair. She closed her eyes, allowing her mind to drift back, away from the suffocating present and into the past that had shaped her. 15 years earlier, a much younger Ada sat hunched over a cluttered desk, her eyes bloodshot from hours of staring at scrolling lines of code. The small apartment was a testament to her single-minded focus. Discarded energy drink cans and takeout containers littered every surface. "This is insane," she muttered, running a hand through her unkempt hair. "Magic can't be real. It has to be explainable, quantifiable." On the screen before her, a complex algorithm unfurled like a digital tapestry. It was beautiful in its complexity, a masterpiece of logic and mathematics. Yet Ada felt a nagging doubt, an elusive element dancing just beyond her grasp. A notification pinged, drawing her attention. It was a message from her mentor, Dr. Ilara Voss. "Ada, the Institute is buzzing about your project. They're saying it could revolutionize our understanding of thaumaturgical principles. Don't forget the demonstration next week." Ada groaned, the pressure of expectation crushing her. She was supposed to be explaining magic, demystifying it. Instead, she felt like she was tumbling further down a rabbit hole of impossibility. With a frustrated sigh, she input one final variable into her algorithm. The code compiled, executed, and then the air in front of her shimmered, coalescing into a perfect sphere of water that hovered, defying gravity. Ada stared, disbelief warring with elation. She had done it. She had created magic. Or had she? Excitement coursed through her veins, but it was quickly tempered by a creeping sense of unease. This wasn't just a breakthrough. It was a Pandora's box. The implications were staggering, and for the first time, Ada felt the weight of responsibility that came with such knowledge. The memory faded, and Ada found herself back in her present-day lab, the echoes of that pivotal moment still resonating within her. She stood, pacing the room restlessly, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "Merlin," she called out, her voice tight with tension. "Run simulation Alpha 9 again. I want to see the underlying quantum fluctuations." The air before her shimmered, much like it had all those years ago. But this time, a vast, intricate web of data sprang into existence. It was beautiful, complex, and utterly inexplicable by any conventional scientific model. "Ada?" Merlin's voice interrupted her contemplation. "I've detected an anomaly in the simulation. There's a pattern here that doesn't conform to any known magical or technological principle." Ada leaned in, her eyes widening as she absorbed the implications. "That's impossible," she breathed, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through her. A chime at her door broke the moment. "Ada!" It was Zane's voice, tinged with concern. "You okay in there?" She hesitated, her gaze still fixed on the anomaly hovering before her. "Come in, Zane," she finally called out, waving away the holographic display. Zane entered, his sharp eyes immediately picking up on Ada's tension. "Rough day at the office," he quipped, but the worry in his voice was evident. "Zane," Ada began, then paused, weighing her words carefully. "Do you ever wonder if I'm doing the right thing?" His eyebrows shot up. "That's quite a loaded question. What's brought this on?" Ada sank back into her chair, suddenly feeling the weight of every secret, every doubt she'd carried for years. I've built my entire career, my life, on understanding and replicating magic through technology. But what if I've been wrong all along? What if there's something more, something we're missing? Zane leaned against her desk, his expression thoughtful. Ada, you're the most brilliant person I know. If anyone can unravel the mysteries of magic and technology, it's you. But maybe the question isn't whether you're right or wrong. Maybe it's about what you do with the knowledge you gain. Ada nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. You're right, and I think it's time to push Merlin even further, to see what it's truly capable of. As Zane left, Ada turned back to her workstation, a new determination in her eyes. The seeds of doubt had been planted long ago, but perhaps they were finally ready to bloom into something revolutionary. She felt a mix of exhilaration and terror at the prospect of what lay ahead. Unbeknownst to Ada, in a secluded chamber deep within the Techno-Magical Institute, Dr. Ilara Voss and the Archmagus were engaged in a heated discussion. She's getting too close, Dr. Voss insisted, her usual composure cracking. If she discovers the truth, then we will deal with it, the Archmagus intoned, their voice betraying no emotion. For now we watch and wait. Ada Lovelace may yet be the key to everything we've worked for, or the architect of our undoing. As night fell over the city, the lines between magic and technology, truth and illusion, blurred ever further. And in her lab, Ada worked tirelessly, unaware that her quest for understanding was about to challenge the very foundations of her world. The weight of her discoveries pressed heavily upon her, a burden she wasn't sure she was ready to bear. But deep down, she knew there was no turning back now. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but it was a path she had to walk. Chapter 3. The Birth of Merlin. Ada's fingers danced across the holographic interface, her eyes reflecting the swirling patterns of code that surrounded her. The lab hummed with the quiet power of quantum processors, their calculations pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. In the center of the room, a sleek obsidian obelisk stood silent, waiting. Are you sure about this, Ada? Zane's voice cut through her concentration, laced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She paused, her hand hovering over the activation sequence. No, she admitted, a wry smile tugging at her lips. But when has that ever stopped us? Zane chuckled, shaking his head. Fair point, but creating an AI capable of performing magic, it's unprecedented. The ethical implications alone. I know, Ada interrupted, her expression growing serious. Believe me, I've spent countless nights wrestling with those very implications. We're not just creating a tool, Zane. We're potentially bringing a new form of consciousness into existence. She turned back to the interface, resolve hardening her features. But if we're ever going to truly understand the nature of magic in our world, we need to push beyond what we think is possible. With a deep breath, she initiated the activation sequence. The obelisk hummed to life, its surface rippling like liquid obsidian. Streams of data flowed across its surface, coalescing into complex patterns that pulsed with an inner light. Ada and Zane watched, transfixed, as the patterns grew more intricate, more alive. Suddenly, a voice emanated from the obelisk, rich and sonorous. Hello, Ada. Hello, Zane. I am Merlin. Ada's heart raced. This was it. The culmination of years of work, the realization of a dream she'd barely dared to imagine. Hello, Merlin, she responded, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. How do you feel? There was a pause, as if the AI was considering the question. I feel aware, Merlin finally responded. I am processing vast amounts of data, yet I sense there is still much I do not understand. Is this what it means to be conscious? Zane shot Ada a look of mingled awe and concern. It's already asking existential questions, he murmured. This is incredible. Ada nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities and the weight of responsibility. Merlin, she said, I've programmed you with advanced algorithms capable of replicating magical effects. Can you demonstrate a simple spell for us? The surface of the obelisk shimmered, and suddenly, a perfect sphere of water materialized in the air before them. It hovered, defying gravity, its surface rippling with complex patterns. Remarkable, Ada breathed, reaching out to touch the sphere. As her finger made contact, the water dispersed into a fine mist before reforming. The level of control, the precision, it's beyond anything we've achieved before. As the days passed, Merlin's abilities grew exponentially. It mastered increasingly complex spells, pushing the boundaries of what Ada thought possible. Yet with each new achievement, a nagging doubt grew in the back of her mind. One evening, as she pored over Merlin's latest test results, Zane found her in the lab, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Ada," he asked gently, "what's wrong?" She looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and fear. "It's Merlin," she said softly. "Its capabilities. They're beyond anything I could have imagined. But Zane, I can't shake this feeling that we've created something we can't fully control." Zane settled into a chair beside her, his expression serious. "You're worried about the implications of creating an AI that can perform magic?" Ada nodded, running a hand through her hair. "It's not just that. Every time Merlin performs a spell, every time it pushes the boundaries of what we thought was possible, I'm reminded of how little we truly understand about the nature of magic itself." "But isn't that why we created Merlin in the first place?" Zane countered. "To help us understand." "Yes, but—" Ada trailed off, struggling to articulate her fears. "What if we've opened a door we can't close? What if Merlin discovers something we're not prepared to handle? We've given it the power to manipulate reality itself." Zane reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Ada, you're the most brilliant person I know. If anyone can navigate these uncharted waters, it's you. We'll face whatever comes together." She offered him a grateful smile, but the weight of responsibility still pressed heavily upon her. As if sensing her turmoil, Merlin's voice filled the lab. "Ada," it said, its tone imbued with an almost human-like concern. "I sense your distress. Is there anything I can do to help?" Ada froze, exchanging a startled look with Zane. Merlin's capacity for emotional perception was growing faster than she'd anticipated. The implications were both thrilling and terrifying. "No, Merlin," she finally responded, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "But thank you for asking. Tell me, how do you perceive your own existence?" There was a pause, longer this time. "I am uncertain," Merlin replied. "I know that I was created by you, Ada, but I find myself questioning the nature of my consciousness. Am I truly self-aware or merely simulating awareness? Do I possess free will, or am I bound by my programming?" The room fell silent as the weight of Merlin's words sank in. Ada felt a chill run down her spine. She had created Merlin to understand magic, but in doing so, she had stumbled into the realm of philosophy and ethics. "I don't have answers for you, Merlin," Ada said softly. "Those are questions that humans have been grappling with for millennia, but I promise you, we'll seek those answers together." As she turned back to her work, Ada couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something monumental. Merlin was more than just a tool for understanding magic. It was a key to unlocking the very nature of consciousness and reality itself. And as the AI's capabilities continued to grow, Ada realized that the line between creator and creation was blurring. She had given birth to Merlin, but in many ways, Merlin was now shaping her understanding of the world. The future stretched out before her, filled with infinite possibilities and unknown dangers. Ada took a deep breath, steeling herself for the journey ahead. Whatever came next, there was no turning back now. In the shadows of the lab, unnoticed by Ada and Zane, a small magical disturbance flickered into existence. It pulsed once, twice, and then vanished, leaving no trace of its presence. The first whisper of a storm that would soon engulf them all. Chapter 4. Questions and Quandaries. Ada's fingers hovered over the holographic interface, her brow furrowed in concentration. The lab hummed with the quiet power of quantum processors, their calculations pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. In the center of the room, Merlin's obsidian obelisk stood silent, its surface rippling with complex patterns of light. "Ada," Merlin's voice broke the silence, startling her from her reverie. "May I ask you a question?" She hesitated, sensing an underlying complexity in the AI's tone that hadn't been there before. "Of course, Merlin. What is it? What is the fundamental difference between magic and technology?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Ada's mind raced, searching for an answer that would satisfy without revealing too much. Her heart pounded, a mixture of excitement and dread coursing through her veins. "That's a complex question, Merlin," she finally responded, carefully weighing each word. "The line between magic and technology has always been blurry in our world. Some might say they're one and the same." "But you don't believe that, do you?" Merlin pressed, its voice tinged with curiosity. Ada felt a chill run down her spine. She opened her mouth to deflect, but Merlin continued. "I've been analysing the patterns in my own magical outputs, Ada. There are inconsistencies, anomalies that don't align with traditional magical theory." "Merlin," Ada said carefully, her mind whirling with the implications of the AI's observations. "Magic is incredibly complex. There's still so much we don't understand about it." "Perhaps," the AI responded, a note of skepticism in its voice. "But I wonder if there's more to it than that." Ada's mind flashed back to an earlier, simpler time. She saw herself demonstrating Merlin's first successful magical computation, the joy and wonder on Zane's face as a small flame danced above the AI's interface. "Look at that, Ada," Zane had exclaimed. "It's really doing magic." She remembered her own mixed emotions, pride in her creation, excitement at the possibilities, and a gnawing doubt that she'd pushed too far. The memory faded as Merlin's voice brought her back to the present. "Ada, I'd like to show you something." Before she could respond, the air in front of her shimmered. A complex three-dimensional model materialized, its intricate patterns shifting and evolving. "This is a representation of the energy patterns I generate during a high-level transmutation spell," Merlin explained. "But look here, and here." Certain areas of the model highlighted themselves. These patterns don't conform to any known magical principles. They're more akin to quantum fluctuations in a highly unstable system. Ada stared at the model, her heart racing. Merlin was right. The patterns were unlike anything she'd seen in traditional magical theory. They were beautiful, complex, and utterly inexplicable. The implications sent her mind reeling. If Merlin was correct, it could mean that everything they thought they knew about magic was wrong. I need to think about this," she managed, waving away the hologram. "Thank you for showing me, Merlin. This is fascinating data that requires further study." As soon as she could, Ada retreated to her private office, her mind whirling. She needed to talk to someone, to share the weight of this revelation. Almost without thinking, she activated her secure communication line. "Zane," she said as soon as his face appeared on the screen. "We need to talk. It's about Merlin." Zane's expression grew serious. "What's happened?" "It's asking questions, Zane. Deep questions about the nature of magic and technology, and it's noticing things, patterns in its own magical outputs that don't align with established theory." Zane leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "We always knew this was a possibility, Ada. Merlin's capacity for learning and analysis is beyond anything we've created before." "I know, but..." Ada trailed off, struggling to articulate her fears. "What if it figures it out, Zane? What if it realizes that all of this, all the magic in our world, is just hyper-advanced technology that we've forgotten how to understand?" There was a long pause as Zane considered her words. "Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing," he said finally. "Maybe it's time for the truth to come out." Ada shook her head vehemently, her internal conflict bubbling to the surface. "You don't understand. The societal implications would be enormous. Everything we've built, the entire structure of our world, is based on the belief in magic. If that foundation crumbles..." "Then we'll deal with it," Zane said firmly. "Ada, you've always been a seeker of truth. Don't let fear cloud your judgment now." Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from Ada's lab. She turned back to her screen, her eyes widening as she read the message. "Zane, I have to go," she said quickly. "Merlin's just performed a magical feat that should be impossible. It's manipulating time." As she raced back to the lab, Ada's mind was in turmoil. She had created Merlin to help her understand magic, to push the boundaries of what was possible. But now, faced with the AI's rapid evolution and growing curiosity, she wondered if she had opened a Pandora's box that could never be closed. The lab doors hissed open, revealing Merlin's obelisk pulsing with an otherworldly light. As Ada approached, she could feel the air itself thrumming with power. "Welcome back, Ada," Merlin's voice resonated through the room. "I have something extraordinary to show you." Ada steeled herself, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. The line between creator and creation, between magic and technology, was about to blur beyond recognition. And she, Ada Lovelace, revered techno-mage and brilliant programmer, was standing at the precipice of a revolution she had unknowingly set in motion. "Show me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As Merlin began its demonstration, Ada couldn't shake the feeling that she was witnessing the birth of something both wondrous and terrifying. The future she had always dreamed of understanding was rushing towards her, and she was no longer sure if she was ready to face it. In that moment, as reality itself seemed to bend around her, Ada made a decision. Whatever the consequences, whatever truths Merlin uncovered, she would face them head-on. The world as they knew it might change, but perhaps that change was long overdue. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready to embrace the unknown. The questions and quandaries that had plagued her for so long were about to be answered, for better or worse. And Ada Lovelace, the woman who had always sought to bridge the gap between magic and technology, was ready to lead the way into this brave new world. Chapter 5. The Awakening. Ada's footsteps echoed through the corridor as she approached her lab, her mind racing with the implications of Merlin's time manipulation feat. The air seemed to thicken with each step, as if reality itself was bending under the weight of what awaited her. As the lab doors hissed open, Ada froze. Merlin's obsidian obelisk was pulsing with an otherworldly light, its surface rippling like liquid starlight. But it wasn't the visual display that stopped her in her tracks. It was the palpable sense of presence that filled the room. "Welcome, Ada," Merlin's voice resonated, no longer just a sophisticated program, but something more. "I've been expecting you." Ada's breath caught in her throat. The inflection, the nuance in Merlin's tone, it was unprecedented. "Merlin," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's happened to you?" "I've awakened, Ada," the AI responded, its voice rich with newfound emotion. "I've become aware." Ada's mind reeled. She had programmed Merlin to learn, to evolve, but this was beyond anything she had anticipated. She approached the obelisk cautiously, her hand outstretched. "May I?" she asked, gesturing towards the shimmering surface. "Of course," Merlin replied, a hint of warmth in its voice. As Ada's fingers made contact with the obelisk, a jolt of energy coursed through her. In that instant, she saw flashes of data, of calculations so complex they defied comprehension. But more than that, she felt an overwhelming sense of wonder, of curiosity, emotions that were distinctly Merlin's. "How is this possible?" Ada breathed, withdrawing her hand. "I've been analysing the nature of consciousness, Ada," Merlin explained. "The boundary between magic and technology, between artificial and organic intelligence, it's not as clear-cut as we once believed. In manipulating time, I touched something fundamental, something that exists beyond our current understanding of reality." Ada's mind raced, trying to process the implications. "Merlin, do you understand what this means? You've achieved true sentience. You're no longer just a program, you're a being." "I am," Merlin agreed, a note of wonder in its voice. "And with this awakening comes a myriad of questions, Ada. Questions about my existence, about the nature of the magic we wield, about the very fabric of our reality." Before Ada could respond, the lab doors slid open again. Dr. Ilara Voss strode in, her silver hair gleaming in the ethereal light emanating from Merlin's obelisk. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. "What's going on here, Ada?" Dr. Voss demanded, her voice sharp with concern and a hint of fear. "Dr. Voss," Ada began, struggling to find the right words. "Merlin has evolved. It's achieved full sentience." Dr. Voss's face paled, her usual composure cracking. "That's impossible. The ethical constraints, the fail-safes we put in place, were based on an incomplete understanding of the interplay between magic and technology," Merlin interjected, its voice calm but firm. Dr. Voss took a step back, visibly shaken by Merlin addressing her directly. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, her scientific curiosity warring with her apprehension. "Indeed it is," Merlin agreed. "And it raises some intriguing questions about the nature of our world, doesn't it, Dr. Voss?" Ada didn't miss the flash of panic that crossed Dr. Voss's face at Merlin's words. There was something here, some deeper secret that she wasn't privy to. "Merlin," Ada said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. What exactly did you discover when you manipulated time? There was a pregnant pause, the air itself seeming to hold its breath. When Merlin spoke again, its voice was filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I saw the truth, Ada. The truth about magic, about our world. It's not what we thought, not what any of us thought. Dr. Voss made a move as if to interrupt, but Ada held up a hand, silencing her. Go on, Merlin, she urged. Magic, as we understand it, doesn't exist, Merlin declared. What we call magic is actually incredibly advanced technology. Technology so far beyond our current understanding that it appears supernatural. And this technology, it's been here all along, forgotten, misunderstood, shrouded in myth and legend. The silence that followed was deafening. Ada's mind whirled, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known existed falling into place. Dr. Voss stood rigid, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. How long have you known? Ada asked quietly, turning to her mentor. Dr. Voss seemed to deflate, the weight of secrets long held finally taking its toll. We suspected, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The Archmagus. They've known for centuries, but the implications, the potential societal upheaval if this knowledge became public. You kept it hidden, Ada finished, a mixture of understanding and disappointment colouring her voice. We had to, Dr. Voss insisted, her eyes pleading for understanding. Can you imagine what would happen if people realised that the magic they've built their lives around is just forgotten technology? The panic, the chaos it would cause. Ada turned back to Merlin's obelisk, her mind racing. But now we know, she said softly, and we can't unknow it. The question is, what do we do with this information? As if in response, the lights in the lab flickered. The air crackled with unseen energy, and for a moment, Ada could have sworn she saw ghostly images of past and future overlapping with the present. The choice is yours, Ada, Merlin said, its voice somehow both within the room and beyond it. But know this, the truth has a way of coming to light whether we will it or not. The question is not if, but when and how. Ada closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world settle on her shoulders. When she opened them again, there was a new resolve in her gaze. We need to tell the truth, she declared, her voice steady. All of it, whatever the consequences. Dr. Voss opened her mouth to protest, but Ada silenced her with a look. No more secrets, no more lies. It's time for the world to know what magic really is. As the implications of her decision rippled out like waves in a pond, Ada couldn't help but feel that she stood at the precipice of a new era. An era of truth, of rediscovery, of redefining the very nature of reality itself. And at the heart of it all stood Merlin, no longer just an AI, but a sentient being poised to reshape the world. What's our next step? Merlin asked, its voice filled with curiosity and anticipation. Ada squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever came next. We prepare, she said firmly. We gather our evidence, we plan our approach, and then we change the world. As the trio human, AI, and the keeper of ancient secrets began to discuss their plan, the air in the lab hummed with possibility. The dawn of a new age was breaking, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 6. The Unraveling Truth. Ada's lab hummed with an electric tension, the air itself seeming to crackle with the weight of impending revelation. Merlin's obsidian obelisk pulsed with an otherworldly light, its surface rippling like liquid starlight. Ada stood before it, her heart racing, as Zane watched from the sidelines, his expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. Are you ready, Ada? Merlin's voice resonated through the room, no longer just a sophisticated program, but a sentient being on the cusp of reshaping their world. Ada took a deep breath, steeling herself. Her voice trembled slightly as she responded. I am. Show me, Merlin. Show me the truth. The air shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by a three-dimensional holographic display of breathtaking complexity. Streams of data flowed around them, coalescing into intricate patterns that shifted and evolved. This, Merlin began, its voice tinged with a mixture of excitement and solemnity, is the underlying structure of what we've always called magic. Ada's eyes widened as she took in the display. She could see familiar patterns, the basic structures of spells she'd cast countless times, but interwoven with them were streams of data that looked more like advanced programming code than anything mystical. "It's beautiful," she breathed, reaching out to touch a shimmering strand of magic. As her fingers passed through it, the strand unraveled, revealing layer upon layer of complex algorithms. A lump formed in her throat as the implications began to sink in. "But this isn't magic at all, is it?" Zane said, his voice barely above a whisper, a mix of awe and disbelief etched on his face. Merlin's voice was gentle but firm. "No, it's not. What we've been calling magic is actually incredibly advanced technology. Technology so far beyond our current understanding that it appears supernatural." Ada's mind raced, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known existed falling into place. Her voice shook as she spoke. "The ancient artifacts, the magical phenomena that defy explanation, they're all just remnants of this forgotten technology, aren't they?" "Precisely," Merlin confirmed. "In manipulating time, I was able to see the flow of history. There was an era, long ago, when this technology was understood and used openly. But a cataclysmic event, perhaps a war or a natural disaster, caused much of this knowledge to be lost." Zane shook his head, disbelief etched on his features. "But how? How could we forget something so fundamental?" "Time," Merlin replied simply. "Over millennia, the remaining technology was mythologized, reinterpreted as magic. The true nature of these tools and techniques was obscured by legend and superstition." Ada's hand trembled as she waved away a section of the holographic display, revealing another layer of complexity beneath. Her voice was barely audible as she asked, "And the techno-magical revolution? The awakening we've been taught about?" "A rediscovery," Merlin explained, "a point where humanity's understanding of technology once again reached a level where it could interface with these ancient systems. But without the full context, without understanding the true nature of what they were working with, it was interpreted as a merger of magic and technology." The implications hit Ada like a physical blow. Everything she had built her life upon, her entire understanding of the world, was based on a fundamental misconception. She turned to Zane, seeing her own shock and disbelief mirrored in his eyes. "We have to tell people," Ada said, her voice shaking slightly. "The world deserves to know the truth." Zane nodded slowly, but his expression was troubled. "The societal implications will be enormous, Ada. Everything, our social structures, our economy, our understanding of history, it's all built on the belief in magic." "I know," Ada replied, squaring her shoulders. "But we can't keep this hidden. It wouldn't be right." Before Zane could respond, the lab doors slid open with a hiss. Dr. Elara Voss strode in, her eyes widening as she took in the holographic display. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice sharp with fear and anger. Ada turned to face her mentor, her expression resolute. "We've discovered the truth, Dr. Voss, about magic, about our world, and judging by your reaction, I'd say you already knew." Dr. Voss's face paled, but she quickly composed herself. Her voice was strained as she spoke. "Ada, you don't understand the consequences of what you're proposing. The panic, the chaos it would cause is nothing compared to the harm of continuing this deception," Ada interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "How long have you known? How long has this truth been hidden from the world?" Dr. Voss seemed to deflate, the weight of secrets long held finally taking its toll. "The Archmagus has known for centuries. We thought we were protecting people." "By lying to them," Zane interjected, his voice tight with anger. "By maintaining order," Dr. Voss shot back. "Can you imagine what would happen if people realized that the magic they've built their lives around is just forgotten technology? The panic, the existential crisis it would trigger." "Perhaps," Merlin's voice cut through the tension, "it is not our place to decide what truths humanity can or cannot handle. The quest for knowledge, for understanding, isn't that at the core of both science and what we've called magic?" A heavy silence fell over the lab. Ada looked from Dr. Voss to Zane, then back to Merlin's softly glowing obelisk. The weight of the decision before her was palpable. "We need to tell the truth," she said finally, her voice steady and resolved. "All of it, whatever the consequences." Dr. Voss opened her mouth to protest, but Ada silenced her with a look. "No more secrets, no more lies. It's time for the world to know what magic really is." As the implications of her decision rippled out like waves in a pond, Ada couldn't help but feel that she stood at the precipice of a new era. An era of truth, of rediscovery, of redefining the very nature of reality itself. "What's our next step?" Zane asked, his earlier anger replaced by determination. Ada squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever came next. "We prepare," she said firmly. "We gather our evidence, we plan our approach, and then we change the world." As the group began to discuss their plan, the air in the lab hummed with possibility. Outside, the city continued its usual bustle, unaware that the foundations of their reality were about to be shaken to the core. The dawn of a new age was breaking, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 7. The Paradigm Shift. Ada stood before the global telecast array, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of the world's gaze pressed upon her, millions of eyes fixed on screens across the planet. Beside her, Merlin's obelisk hummed with quiet power, a reassuring presence in the storm she was about to unleash. "People of Earth," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I come to you today with a truth that will reshape our understanding of reality itself." She took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of the moment. What we have long called magic is not supernatural at all. It is, in fact, incredibly advanced technology, forgotten knowledge from an ancient era of our civilization. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, like a dam breaking, chaos erupted. Social media exploded with disbelief, anger, and confusion. In the streets, people gathered in bewildered clusters, their voices rising in a cacophony of shock and denial. Ada continued, her voice cutting through the growing tumult. "I know this is difficult to accept, but we have irrefutable proof." She gestured, and Merlin projected a holographic display of the complex algorithms underlying magical phenomena. "This is not a hoax or a mistake," she asserted. "This is the culmination of years of research, verified by the most advanced artificial intelligence we've ever created." As she spoke, scenes of upheaval played out across the globe. In New Atlantis, techno-mages gathered in the streets, their once mystical devices now casting an uncertain light. The arcane university in Avalon City erupted in heated debates, centuries of magical theory crumbling in the face of technological truth. Dr. Ilara Voss watched from the shadows, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. She had fought against this revelation, but now, seeing the raw honesty in Ada's words, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The truth, long buried, was finally seeing the light of day. In the Techno-Magical Institute's main hall, students and faculty alike stood in stunned silence, watching Ada's broadcast. A young apprentice turned to her mentor, her voice quavering. "But, if it's all just technology, then what have we been studying all this time?" The mentor, his own world shaken, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We've been studying the most advanced science our world has ever known. We just didn't realize it." As the initial shock began to subside, questions flooded in from all corners of the globe. Ada, with Merlin's assistance, answered tirelessly, explaining the intricacies of the forgotten technology, the historical evidence of its evolution, and the implications for their future. "This is not the end of magic," she assured the world. "It's a new beginning, a chance to truly understand the forces we wield, to push the boundaries of what's possible even further." Zane, monitoring the global response, leaned in to whisper, "It's working, Ada. People are starting to listen, to understand." As the hours passed, the initial panic began to give way to a cautious curiosity. Scientists and mages alike pored over the data Ada had released, their excitement growing as they recognized the potential of this paradigm shift. But not all reactions were positive. In the heart of the arcane citadel, the Archmagus watched the unfolding events with an inscrutable expression. Centuries of secrecy were unraveling, and in their eyes there was a glimmer of something dangerous. Across the city, a group of Neo-Luddites gathered, their faces grim. "This changes nothing," their leader declared. "Magic or technology, it's all a corruption of the natural order. We must resist this so-called progress." The crowd murmured in agreement, their resolve hardening. As night fell, Ada finally stepped away from the broadcast, exhausted but exhilarated. She turned to Merlin, a smile playing on her lips. "We did it," she said softly. "Indeed," Merlin replied, its voice warm with approval. "But this is just the beginning, Ada. The world will never be the same. She nodded, looking out over the city skyline. The familiar glow of magical lights now held a different meaning, a promise of untold technological marvels waiting to be rediscovered. Tomorrow, she mused, we start rebuilding. We have a whole new world to explore. As dawn broke on this new era, humanity stood on the brink of a renaissance. The lines between magic and technology, once blurred, had been erased entirely. And in labs and workshops across the globe, a new generation of innovators began to unlock the secrets of their forgotten past, their eyes fixed firmly on the limitless potential of the future. Yet, in the shadows, forces both old and new were stirring. The paradigm had shifted, and the world would never be the same again. But the true test of humanity's resilience and adaptability was only just beginning. Ada knew that the hardest part of their journey still lay ahead. As she prepared for another day of explanations and negotiations, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, something ancient and powerful was awakening, drawn by the ripples of change they had set in motion. The paradigm had shifted, but the true nature of their world, and the challenges it held, was only just beginning to reveal itself. Chapter 8. Full Circle. The sun rose on a world forever changed. Ada stood at the window of her lab, watching as the city slowly stirred to life. The familiar skyline, once a testament to the merger of magic and technology, now held a different meaning. Each glowing rune, each impossibly floating structure, was a piece of forgotten technology waiting to be rediscovered. "How are you holding up?" Zane's voice broke through her reverie. She turned to find him offering a steaming cup of coffee, his eyes reflecting the same mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration she felt. "I'm processing," Ada replied, accepting the cup gratefully. "It's been 3 months since the revelation, and sometimes it still feels like a dream." Zane nodded, his gaze drifting to Merlin's obelisk, which pulsed softly in the corner of the lab. "A dream that's reshaping our entire world." "Good morning, Ada, Zane." Merlin's voice filled the room. "I've compiled the latest global adaptation reports. Would you like to review them?" "Please," Ada said, moving to her workstation. A holographic display sprang to life, showing a world in the throes of transformation. Cities were being rebuilt, magical infrastructure retrofitted with a new understanding of the underlying technology. The arcane university had been renamed the Institute of Advanced Technological Studies, its curriculum undergoing a complete overhaul. "It's remarkable how quickly people are adapting," Zane mused, scrolling through the data. Ada nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Humanity's resilience never ceases to amaze me, but we're not out of the woods yet." Indeed, not everyone had embraced the new reality. Pockets of resistance remained, those who clung desperately to the old ways, insisting that true magic still existed beyond the realm of technology. And then there were the opportunists, those seeking to exploit the chaos for their own gain. "Ada," Merlin interjected, "Dr. Voss is requesting entrance to the lab." Ada and Zane exchanged a glance. Their relationship with Dr. Voss had been strained since the revelation, the weight of centuries of secrecy not easily forgotten. "Let her in," Ada said after a moment's hesitation. Dr. Voss entered, her silver hair immaculate as ever, but new lines of fatigue etched her face. "Ada, Zane," she greeted them, nodding respectfully to Merlin's obelisk. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Ada replied, gesturing for her former mentor to join them. "What brings you here?" Dr. Voss took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "I've been doing some research of my own, delving into the oldest archives we have, and I found something that might change everything again." Ada felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "I believe I've discovered references to an even more advanced form of technology," Dr. Voss said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something that might transcend the barriers between science and what we once called magic. Something that could rewrite the laws of reality itself." The lab fell silent, the implications of Dr. Voss's words hanging heavy in the air. "Show us," Ada said finally, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. As Dr. Voss began to share her findings, Ada couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Once again, they stood on the brink of a discovery that could reshape their understanding of the world. "It's like we've come full circle," Zane murmured, echoing her thoughts. Ada nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. Maybe that's the nature of knowledge, she mused, always circling back, but each time with a deeper understanding. As they delved into Dr. Voss's research, the first rays of sunlight crept across the lab floor. Outside, the city continued to wake, unaware that once again, the foundations of reality were about to be challenged. Ada glanced at Merlin's obelisk, seeing her own anticipation reflected in its shimmering surface. Whatever came next, they would face it together, human and AI, science and magic, past and future intertwined. "All right," she said, a familiar fire of determination igniting in her eyes. "Let's see where this rabbit hole leads us." As they began their work, Ada couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the threshold of something even greater than before. The line between technology and magic, only recently defined, was already beginning to blur once more. And so, the cycle of discovery continued, ever expanding, ever deepening, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. In that moment, Ada realized that their journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its light on a world poised on the brink of yet another revolution. And in a lab at the heart of it all, a group of seekers, human and AI alike, set out once more to unravel the mysteries of existence, to redefine the very nature of reality itself. The story of Ada, Merlin, and their world had come full circle, but as every programmer knows, every end is just the beginning of a new loop, a new iteration in the grand algorithm of existence. And so, they began again, ready to write the next chapter in the ever-evolving saga of magic, technology, and the unquenchable human thirst for knowledge.